I'm Brian Gautreau. I'm a sales engineer here at NGINX. I cover some of the federal customers and some other large commercial accounts. But today we're going to talk about NGINX Plus, Kubernetes, Prometheus, Grafana, taking a look at some of the things we can get out of our Ingress controller, and how we can actually display that in some kind of meaningful way. Just a quick agenda, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the Ingress controller, NGINX Plus, the API for NGINX Plus, a little bit about Prometheus, our Prometheus Exporter, and Grafana. I'll show you guys a demo of it, and then we'll take some questions. So I assume most of you guys were here for the last session. I think I saw a lot of hands up for who uses and who doesn't. But so we're going to use a little bit of each of these products. The NGINX Plus, obviously, Kubernetes, Prometheus, and Grafana. Kubernetes obviously is going to do our orchestration. The Ingress, managing our Ingress resources. Prometheus is going to collect some of the data from our NGINX instance. And then Grafana we're going to use to make some nice, pretty dashboards. So I don't have the fancy boxes and figures for circles and triangles that was done before. But just trying to give you guys an idea, we have, I think I get the green laser. So we have a couple of services that are running in our Kubernetes cluster. We use our Ingress controller here to point our happy user into these applications. If any of you guys have seen our GitHub repo with the Kubernetes Ingress, the sample apps, I believe, are in here for coffee and tea. The cafe, the whole example is out there. So it's actually a really great framework to start with to build just about any Ingress from that point. As Michael talked about in the last session, we do things. We do the SSL termination. Routing our requests based on URI, based on host name. NGINX Plus adds things like the real-time status. I'll show you the dashboard here, the status API, session persistence, and some JOT token authentication. And as was previously mentioned, the on-the-fly reconfiguration. So being able to scale out and scale in your various services, and have them have those pods added directly into memory from in NGINX Plus. That way, it's saving on reloads that have to happen if you were using open source. Whenever you have to add and take away your various services. So. And again, there's annotations for adding and modifying different features within NGINX, and that's that. So yeah, I don't have good, pretty squares. Stop. Back to here. Sorry. So the NGINX API, the NGINX Plus API exposes over 150 metrics. I did a count the other day of all of the endpoints. I think it comes out to 158, but it gives you status on things like throughput, on the number of connections per second. You get memory utilization. All of these you can be per upstream. So what is the throughput for some individual server? What is how many connections has it had? How many 200 responses? How many 400 responses? Things like that. So we start to see those. This is just a quick little sample of what an API, what the API output looks like. And again, the dashboard. So the dashboard is NGINX Plus actually using some of this, or using rather all of the status that we're getting out of there. So with Prometheus can store time-based data. It gives you a nice interface for being able to query and to kind of manipulate the data that you're getting. And by manipulate, I just mean you can sum things, you can count things, you can take the numbers, take the data that we're getting out of some of these sources, and you can actually use those to provide something that is meaningful to you. And I'll show you an example of that here in a minute. The other good thing with Prometheus is it's a point of aggregation for all of your data. So we have, especially with our Ingress controller, right? We have when you deploy an Ingress controller, you probably will deploy multiple instances of your Ingress controller. Each one of those is going to have separate connections, separate throughput. But this gives you, so Prometheus is going to give you a point to actually aggregate that. And now you can see more about what your overall application is doing. Again, all those metrics that we talked about. This is kind of, the Prometheus exporter is kind of the glue that brings this all together, right? We have a small piece of Go code that is going to consume our API, and it's going to output something that Prometheus can understand. So it can scrape the data. Prometheus can scrape the data and actually have meaningful counters from that. Prometheus isn't reading it's not reading our JSON output from the API, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to query our exporter. In the case of our Ingress controller, we deploy it as a sidecar to the NGINX Ingress controller, and it's going to read from our API endpoint and then output that. Give me 1 second here. You get more of my fancy drawings. If I can find my mouse, here we go. And I believe it is this one. So, again, we have our happy user over here that's accessing all of our services. We have our NGINX Plus Ingress Controller, right? This whole box here is our pod that we've deployed our Ingress Controller with. It's exposing a couple of ports, 443 and 80 for our traffic. Also in here is port 8080, which is where we run our API by default. And then we have a sidecar here with the exporter. And the exporter is exposing on 9113. So the exporter is going to read from 8080. Prometheus is going to scrape here on 9113. And then if you choose, you can use the dashboard and connect into 8080. And you can actually see that individual instance's dashboard. You can also query this API endpoint if you want for other things. So I'll actually show you that in a minute when I get to my demo. But we'll go back to my slide. Right, so the last piece of this is going to be the Grafana dashboard. The dashboard is going to give us the interface to actually visualize all these metrics that we got out of Prometheus. These are customizable. You are going to query your different, you use Grafana to query those different Prometheus data points that you have. Helps you do things, report on the NGINX health, throughput, so on and so forth. So you can actually drill into each of these a little bit. I will call out too, right? I would say there's a little bit of overlap between this and the NGINX controller that we've been talking about. NGINX controller can do a lot of this, right? It's going to graph, it's going to show those analytics. The controller will actually get more analytics than Prometheus, right? The controller can do things like read the NGINX log files and things like that, so we can find a little more information, but Grafana is another tool for doing that some of that same stuff. So, and it is demo time. For the mouse. Not that big. So can you guys see that in the back? You good? Cool. All right. So Kubernetes get nodes. So I have a 3-node cluster. This cluster is running right here on my laptop as some virtual machines. The performance is as you would expect from a laptop running that many virtual machines. So I have a few services running, a few pods and a few services. I have the coffee and I have the tea. Right? Again, these were the ones that were in the example, and they're just exposed on there's some services that are attached to them. There's also a unit PHP Redis, and there's also a Redis. Let's see if we can kubectl get pod NGINX Ingress. So here are I'm running a deployment, or a daemon set of NGINX Ingress, and you notice there are 2 containers inside each of these pods. If we take a look at that, kubectl describe. So I have, keep going. Whoa. So there were the 2 containers. One is my NGINX Ingress container, exposing a few ports, 8443 and 8080. And I also have my Prometheus Exporter. The Prometheus Exporter is here on 9113. So let me open up one more piece here. can't seem to type. So this is the dashboard that we talked about. This is one instance of NGINX. This is, if I do the same thing and I go to my other IP, I will see the other instance of NGINX. I have my server zone. Again, all the metrics that have been captured with that server zone, and the same thing with the upstreams. So my upstreams I have my coffee, my tea, and my unit, right? And you start to see all of these, all of the metrics that have been captured with this. Can also get that same kind of thing if I curl. So similar, right? This is just the JSON output. And let's do this. I think if I can. There we go. So here's the number of 200 responses. This was on 88. 88 upstreams. Just to see 30,171. 30,171. So these all match up to what we're seeing in that dashboard. So we also can come in and we can see what our Prometheus exporter is doing. Curl. Just for the heck of it, I will. You can see this is what the output looks like from that, from the exporter. And let's see if we can find grep 2xx. So here we go again, 30,171, 33,173. They should all match. Should match. There's that one. 33,173. So those are all the numbers that came out of there. Now, let me actually start a little bit of load because my laptop loves it when I do this. So similar to what Michael was talking about earlier, I actually use another instance of NGINX Plus in front of my cluster to load balance between the daemon set. So each daemon, each host is running NGINX Ingress, and I'm using another NGINX out front of that to actually load balance between those. So now we should see. There's some connections coming right here, and it's going to move along from one to the next. So that's the dashboard, but let's see what we can get out of Prometheus now. And actually, just so you can see too, if so I'm running Grafana and Prometheus here in this same cluster, right? And I'm exposing my Prometheus over here on 30,001. I'm exposing Grafana, and we'll get it in a second on 30,078. 2168. So this is just my Prometheus interface, and I'll start off NGINX Plus. So we have a list of the different metrics that we have captured from. Let's see if we can, let's do upstream server responses. So I get a nice long list, right? There's some things that are different in each of these. First off, I believe this first group is 100, code 100s. Yes, there we go. 100s. There's 200s in here down a little further. There's going to be 300s, 400s, and 500s. So that's cool, but it's not very. It's all here, but it's not very aggregated, right? So let's see if we can filter this down a little bit. Let's go with code equal to XX, close curly. There we go. So now we're down to just the 200 responses, right? And one of these, for each of these, there's a response from each instance of NGINX. Right, so I have the .87s and then the .88s. I also am seeing each of these. I'm seeing one response for each of the upstreams for my my coffee, my tea, and my unit PHP. So here's where it gets kind of fun. We can do things like sum of this. We get one value. It was just the output of all of our results. We can, all right, I think we get that. So let's take a look now at Grafana. So there is my default dashboard that is just Kubernetes. What I created what I've done is created an Ingress Controller dashboard. It's going to show me a number of metrics. First off, just how many Ingress controllers I have. I'm interested in how many upstream servers I have. Things like the number of requests, the throughput, throughput is over here, some server zone, the number of requests per server zone, per instance, the requests per upstream, and what we see, actually, let's take a look inside, and we can see those same types of queries that I did in Prometheus, I'm doing here, so I'm getting that same type of data. This is a rate. Again, number of requests. I'm filtering this for my Ingress controllers. And then one up here is something I am using to show my server state. So if I have a server, all of these servers, these upstream servers are in a good state right now, but if I break one, let's see. I break one with that, and while there is some load, let's take a look back at the dashboard so we can see. So I'm just doing some passive health checks right now. As soon as this guy flips over to the coffee app, we'll see one of those nodes go down. There it goes. So one node is down now. Back here in Grafana in a moment. I will see one of these servers actually go down. There it goes. So I get at least a view here of some of my health of my entire ecosystem, my Ingress ecosystem. This could also be used. Doesn't have to be Ingress, but that is generally where we see most people start their microservices journey. It doesn't have to be Ingress. If you're using NGINX as a sidecar in any of your other services, you could start to extract that same data. You can filter it all the same ways, and you can start to get a view into those other applications. But that's it. Any questions? Awesome.